The wind carried no mercy on Christmas Eve, 1878, and neither did the men hunting Claire Bennett. Ethan Cole raised his lantern against the gathering dark, checking the fence line one last time before the blizzard buried everything. Montana Territory stretched endless around him, 40 miles east of Fort Benton, where civilization thinned to nothing but snow and silence and the constant work of survival. Temperature had dropped to 15 below, the kind of cold that killed careless men and cautious ones alike. He was 34 years old, alone with his daughter, and the storm building overhead looked like it planned to stay 3 days minimum, maybe 4. Long enough to trap them inside, long enough to test their supplies, long enough to make a man grateful for the preparations he'd made and regretful for the ones he'd skipped. The shape in the snow stopped him cold. Not deer, not shadow. Something else. Something wrong. 30 yards from the south fence line, a dark mass against the white, too still to be alive, but positioned wrong to be dead. Ethan's hand moved to the Winchester slung across his shoulder. 15 years on the frontier had taught him that hesitation killed more men than quick decisions ever would. He moved fast, boots crunching through knee-deep drifts, lanterns swinging wild in his grip, throwing shadows across the pines that lined his property. When he reached her, his breath caught hard in his chest. A woman, face down in the snow, one arm stretched forward like she'd been reaching for something. Help, maybe, or hope, or just one more step before the cold took her down for good. Ethan knelt fast, touched her shoulder. Ice clung to her dark hair, transforming it into frozen ropes. Her lips were blue-tinged fingers curled stiff with the beginning of frostbite. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat, feeling for the pulse he expected not to find. It was there. Faint as a whisper, irregular as a broken promise, but there. Thank God, he didn't ask questions. Out here, you don't ask questions before you act. Cold kills faster than answers, come faster than curiosity, faster than caution. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders, worked his arms beneath her body and lifted. She weighed almost nothing. Like the cold had already hollowed her out from the inside, taken everything but the shell. The cabin glowed 50 yards ahead, lamplight bleeding through the single window, promising warmth and safety, and the chance to undo whatever damage the Montana winter had inflicted. His daughter Rose stood in the doorway, small and blonde lamplight, making a halo of her hair. "Papa," her voice carried thin through the wind. "Is she alive?" "She's fighting," Ethan called back, adjusting his grip, moving as fast as the snow allowed. "Open the door wide, darling, and fetch every blanket we got." Rose disappeared inside. Smart girl. Always thinking ahead. 7 years old and already more capable than most adults he'd known. Loss did that to children. Made them grow up faster than they should, made them understand the fragility of everything, made them careful in ways that broke his heart, even as it made him proud. He carried the stranger up the porch steps. Through the threshold, heat hit him like a wall. The fire roared in the stone hearth, Rose's doing, bless her, always anticipating needs before they were spoken. He laid the woman on the rug by the fire, close to the flames, but not too close. Gradual warming. Anything else would do more harm than good. Her dress was torn at the hem, town dress not made for frontier travel. Her hands were scratched and bloody palms scraped raw. She'd been running through brush, running from something. The thought settled cold in his gut, colder than the wind outside. Rose appeared beside him, arms full of quilts. Margaret's quilts, the ones his wife had sewn before she died. Before their son died, before everything ended 2 winters ago and left him alone with a daughter and memories that cut worse than any blade. "Papa, her hands are so cold." "Then we warm them." He pulled off the woman's frozen boots, revealing feet that had gone past cold into something worse. 3 toes showed the telltale white of early frostbite, survivable if treated right, fatal if ignored. He wrapped her feet in wool, began rubbing circulation back into fingers that felt like wax under his calloused palms. "Fetch more wood, darling. Quick now." Rose ran, no questions, no hesitation. Just trust. The kind of trust that made him ache with the weight of responsibility. He was all she had. If he failed, if he died, if he made one wrong choice, she'd be alone in a world that didn't care about 7-year-old girls with no family and no protection. He worked fast, tucking blankets tight, monitoring breathing, checking pulse every 30 seconds. The woman's skin felt colorless and slack, but her chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. Her eyelids fluttered once, twice. She looked at his face, at the firelight dancing on the log walls, at Rose returning with an armload of kindling, struggling under the weight, but determined to help. Her lips moved, shaping a word he couldn't hear. Then her eyes closed again. "She's not dying," Ethan said, more to himself than Rose. "Not tonight, not on Christmas Eve." He built up the fire until it roared. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the walls, hurling snow and ice and fury at anything stupid enough to be caught in its path. Inside, three souls huddled by the light, two who lived there and one who'd been delivered to their door like an answer to a prayer Ethan hadn't known he'd spoken. She woke to warmth. After 3 days of cold that ate through her bones and settled in her marrow, the heat felt like resurrection. A man sat near broad shoulders, silhouetted against the fire-weathered face carved with lines of grief and determination. Careful hands tending the flames. Not the men who chased her, not the killers. Safe. Claire Bennett tried to sit. Pain shot through her ankle like a lightning strike, and she gasped, sharp and involuntary. The man turned quick but gentle movements, economical and practiced. "Easy, ma'am, you've been through hell." His voice was low, steady, mountain voice. The kind that didn't waste words because words were precious, and silence was sometimes the only honest answer to an impossible world. He moved to her side, one hand supporting her back. She saw his face clearly now. 30-something, maybe 35. Grief carved into the lines around his eyes, permanent and deep. A wedding ring still on his finger. Widow or widower. The careful way he touched her suggested the latter. Men with living wives touched different. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Where my cabin, Montana Territory, found you half frozen by my fence line." He reached for a tin cup, held it to her lips. The broth was warm, salty, probably saved her life. Claire drank, then pulled back her mind, starting to work again through the fog of hypothermia and exhaustion. "Thank you." Her voice came out rough. "I'm Claire Bennett. I'm a nurse. I was—" She stopped. Remembering the wagon, the men, the running. "I was traveling. You don't need to explain tonight." The man set the cup down with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his size. "Name's Ethan Cole. That's my daughter, Rose." Claire looked up. A small girl peered down from a loft above, blonde braids framing a solemn face. 7, maybe 8 years old. Far too serious for a child that young. "Are you an angel?" the girl asked. Claire almost laughed, but the child's face was completely serious. No humor, just genuine curiosity mixed with something like hope. "No, sweetheart, just a woman who got very lost." "Papa prayed for help." The girl's voice carried absolute conviction. "Maybe you're the answer." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Rose, come down here. Miss Bennett needs rest, not questions." The child climbed down the ladder with careful precision, each step deliberate. She wore a faded nightgown, feet bare despite the cold floor. When she reached the bottom, she walked straight to Claire and took her hand. Small fingers warm and trusting. "I'm glad you didn't die," Rose said simply. Something in Claire's chest cracked open. The directness of children. The unfiltered truth they spoke before the world taught them to lie or soften or hide. She squeezed the small hand. "Me too." Ethan cleared his throat. "Storm's too heavy. You'll stay till it breaks." It wasn't a question. Just frontier hospitality mixed with the practical reality that sending her out would be murder. "I'll check your ankle." He moved with practiced efficiency, fingers gentle but sure. When he touched the swelling, Claire winced despite herself. Sprained, not broken. He wrapped it with strips of clean cloth, hands steady. "You've done this before," Claire said. "My wife." His voice went flat, empty. "Before she passed, and my daughter when she broke her arm last spring." The past tense sat heavy between them. Claire saw it now. The empty space at the table. The wedding ring he still wore like armor. The careful way he avoided looking at her too long, as if prolonged eye contact might somehow betray the woman who wasn't there anymore. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Cole." "You don't." He stood, moved back to the fire, putting distance between them. "A man does what's right, or he ain't much of a man. Mercy ain't a choice out here." Claire heard what he didn't say. It's what separates the living from the dead, the human from the animal, the civilized from the savage. She'd learned that lesson too 3 days ago watching Dr. Morrison bleed out on a way station floor while 5 men divided stolen morphine and laughed about how easy it had been. Rose climbed into her father's lap, tucked her head under his chin. Ethan held her automatically, his whole body softening in a way that transformed him from frontier hardness to something gentler. Father and daughter wrapped in grief and love, surviving in this small, warm space while the world froze outside. Claire watched them across the firelight and understood she'd stumbled into someone else's carefully guarded sorrow. A father who'd lost his wife, a daughter who'd lost her mother. Both of them building walls against further pain, both of them doing the work of survival without the luxury of healing. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, Claire Bennett realized she'd have to find a way to leave without making it worse, without bringing the danger that followed her into this fragile sanctuary, without destroying the only safe place she'd found in 3 days of running. But first, she had to survive the night. Claire woke before dawn. The cabin was dark except for embers glowing red in the hearth. Ethan slept by the fire, Rose curled against his side like a small blonde shadow, his arms circling her even in sleep, protective always, even unconscious, even exhausted still, guarding the one thing he had left to lose. She tried to shift, testing her ankle. It throbbed hot and swollen but held weight. Good. She could leave when the storm cleared. Wouldn't be a burden longer than necessary. Wouldn't bring her hunters to this door, to this man, to this innocent child who'd already lost too much. Ethan's eyes opened. He saw her watching, sat up carefully so Rose wouldn't wake. Morning. His voice came rough with sleep. Morning. Claire pulled the quilt tighter against the pre-dawn cold. I can help with breakfast, whatever you need. You should rest. I'm a nurse, Mr. Cole. Sitting still drives me mad. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, rare enough that it transformed his face for half a second, showing her what he might have looked like before grief carved permanent channels into his features. Coffee, then, if you can stand. They moved through the small space quietly. Ethan showed her where things were, coffee skillet, the sourdough's a starter his wife had kept alive for 10 years. His hands hesitated on the jar just for a moment, then set it down harder than he meant. Margaret made bread every Sunday. He said her name like it hurt, like speaking it aloud was pulling shrapnel from an old wound. Taught Rose before she... He stopped, picked up the bar again, gentler this time. Before. Claire understood. Some sentences couldn't be finished. Some truths were too heavy to complete. The silence between words carried more meaning than language ever could. They worked without speaking. Claire sliced bread, Ethan fried eggs. When Rose climbed down, yawning and rubbing sleep from her eyes, she found them both at the stove like they'd been doing this for years, like this was normal. Like Claire belonged here, instead of being a stranger who'd nearly died on their land less than 12 hours ago. Miss Claire stayed, Rose said, delight and wonder mixed in equal measure, as if she'd expected to wake and find the strange woman vanished like a fever dream. Just till the weather clears, darling. Ethan set plates on the table. Simple food, frontier breakfast, but hot and plentiful and served with a care that spoke of a man who understood the importance of small rituals in holding back chaos. After breakfast, Rose brought a small wooden frame to the table. Inside, a woman smiled. Dark hair, kind eyes, laugh lines deep as rivers. That's Mama. The child's voice held something between pride and sorrow. She died when I was 5. Claire's throat tightened. She was beautiful. Papa says she's with the angels now. Rose looked at her father, seeking confirmation for a belief she wasn't quite old enough to hold without help. But I think she gets lonely up there. Ethan's face went hard as stone. He stood abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. I'll check the stock. He grabbed his coat, walked out into the cold without another word. The door shut like punctuation. Final. Absolute. Conversation over. Rose climbed into Claire's lap without invitation, seeking comfort from a stranger, because her father's grief left no room for questions about the dead. Papa gets sad when we talk about Mama. He loved her very much. Claire smoothed the child's hair fine and soft under her calloused fingers. Do you got anyone who died? The directness again? No adult filtering, just honest curiosity about shared pain. My parents, when I was 16, they were traveling to California. Wagon overturned crossing a river. So you're alone too? Rose's small arms wrapped around Claire's neck. Not pity, just recognition. Like us. Through the window, Claire could see Ethan standing in the snow, staring at nothing, shoulders rigid, fists clenched at his sides, fighting something internal and losing. A man trapped between honoring the past and surviving the present, unable to choose either without betraying the other. Can you stay till Christmas is really over? Rose whispered. Please. Claire knew she should say no. Knew staying would only make leaving harder. Make the inevitable separation more painful for this child who had already learned too young that people leave and don't come back. But she looked at the girl in her arms and at the man standing alone in the snow and couldn't form the words. If your father says it's all right. When Ethan came back and stomping snow from his boots, Rose asked immediately, Can Miss Claire stay a little longer, Papa? Just till the trail's clear. He met Claire's eyes across the room. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or warning, or both. Weather won't clear for days anyway. His voice was carefully neutral, empty of inflection. You're welcome to stay. But his eyes said something else. I can't afford to need you. Don't make me need you. Don't make Rose need you. We've lost enough. Claire heard it all, understood it all, and stayed anyway because sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was accept shelter instead of running back into the storm. That afternoon, Claire mended Rose's torn rag doll while sitting by the window. Thread and needle moving in practiced rhythm, the kind of small repair work that kept frontier families clothed and functioning. Rose watched, fascinated by the neat stitches appearing like magic. Mama used to sew, she said quietly. Did she teach you? Claire asked, not looking up from her work. A little, before she got too tired. The words hung there. Too tired. The euphemism children used for dying because death was too big a word, too permanent a concept. Too tired suggested, sleep suggested rest, suggested the possibility of waking. Easier than the truth. Ethan stood in the doorway. Watching them, Claire saw it from the corner of her eye. The way his shoulders loosened slightly. The way his breath caught when Rose laughed at something Claire said. For just a moment, the grief stepped back. Just a moment. Then he turned and walked outside again, like staying would somehow betray the woman whose absence defined every corner of this cabin. That night, after Rose climbed to the loft, Claire sat by the fire. Ethan worked at his bench in the corner, whittling something from pine. They didn't speak, but the silence wasn't empty. It held weight, presence, the quiet acknowledgement of two damaged people occupying the same space without demanding anything from each other. Home ain't a place, Claire thought, watching him work, watching the firelight play across his face. It's the people you'd ride through hell to get back to. She'd been riding away from hell. But maybe, just maybe, she'd found something on the other side. Something fragile and temporary and dangerous to want, but real. Undeniably real. A cabin that felt like sanctuary. A child who looked at her with hope instead of suspicion. A man who'd saved her life without asking why she needed saving. Outside, wolves howled in the distance. Real wolves this time, not the human kind that had chased her through 3 days of snow. But Claire knew the human wolves were still out there. Still hunting. Still coming. The question wasn't if they'd find her. The question was when, and whether Ethan Cole would survive the violence she'd brought to his door. The knock came at dawn on the second day, December 26. Ethan's hand moved to his rifle before he was fully awake. Pure instinct from 15 years of frontier life, where the difference between caution and paranoia was measured in survival rates. Easy, boy. The voice from outside was familiar, age tinged with amusement. It's just old Sam. Visible relief crossed Ethan's face. He opened the door to reveal a man in his 70s, lean as jerky, weathered as canyon rock. Samuel Brennan, neighbor mentor, the closest thing to a father Ethan had known since arriving in Montana territory. Saw smoke from your chimney at odd hour. Sam stepped inside without invitation, tracking snow across the floor. Figured something's wrong. His eyes found Claire immediately, sharp gaze taking in everything. The woman by the fire, the wrapped ankle, the town dress torn at the hem, the way Ethan positioned himself between them, protective even of strangers. Found a woman half frozen on my fence line Christmas Eve. Ethan's voice was careful. Been tending her till she can travel. That's so. Sam moved closer, studying Claire with the analytical eye of a man who'd survived by reading situations fast and accurate. She running from something. Don't know yet, haven't asked. Planning to tell. When she's ready to tell, Sam nodded slow approval. Margaret raised you right. He knelt beside Claire, movement surprisingly fluid for his age. Former cavalry scout, frontier survivor man, who'd seen more death than most people could imagine, and somehow stayed human through it all. Named Samuel Brennan, folks call me Sam. He checked her ankle with practiced efficiency. Sprained, not broken, weak to heal, maybe 10 days. His fingers moved to her feet, unwrapping the wool. Frostbite on 3 toes, early stage. Keep them wrapped elevated. You'll keep all of them. He looked at her hands, the scratches, the defensive wounds. And those ain't from falling. You fought through brambles. Running. His eyes met hers. No judgment, just recognition. One survivor to another. Fort Benton, Claire said, meeting his gaze. I was traveling to Helena. Our wagon was attacked. Attacked by who? I don't know. Bandits, maybe. I ran. Sam didn't buy it. Claire could see that in his eyes. But he didn't push, just nodded like he understood the need for partial truths when full truth was too dangerous to speak. Lucky you found Ethan's place. Very lucky. Rose climbed down from the loft, saw Sam, and smiled for the first time since Claire had arrived. Morning, Mr. Sam. Merry Christmas. Morning, little bit. Sam's whole face transformed, 72 years old but lighting up like a child at the sight of her. Merry Christmas to you, too. We didn't do Christmas this year, Rose said matter-of-factly, but we got Miss Claire instead. Seems like a fair trade. Sam ruffled her hair. Maybe better than presents. While Rose helped Sam with coffee, Ethan and the old man stepped outside. Claire watched through the window. 2 men in the snow, teacher and student. Sam talking, Ethan listening. Both occasionally glancing back at the cabin, at her. When they returned 20 minutes later, Sam's face was grave. He'd said something that changed Ethan's posture, tightened his shoulders, put his hand closer to his rifle. Storm won't break for 3 more days, Sam announced. Maybe 4. Nobody's traveling those trails till then. He looked at Claire. Which means you're staying and we're making preparations. Preparations for what? But Claire knew, could see it in their faces. For whoever's looking for you, Sam said simply, because someone is, and they'll come eventually. I should leave. Claire tried to stand. I won't put you in danger. Sit down. Sam's voice carried absolute authority. 72 years old, but still commanding cavalry scouts in his tone. You leave, you die. Storm's too heavy. Temperature's too low. You'd last an hour. Better me than them. That's not your choice to make. Ethan spoke for the first time since they'd come back inside. His voice was flat, final. You're under this roof. That makes you my responsibility. You don't owe me anything. This isn't about owing. He moved to the window, looking out at the endless white. It's about what's right. Sam sat at the table, pulled Rose into his lap. Tell me about this attack. The one on your wagon. Claire hesitated, then decided. These men had earned truth, even if truth brought danger. We were carrying medical supplies, morphine legally shipped to Helena Hospital. Stopped at a way station 2 days out from Fort Benton. She took a breath, remembered. 5 men were there, brothers, I think. The leader was called Colt. Ethan and Sam exchanged glances. They knew the name. That was bad. Dr. Morrison, the doctor I was traveling with, he refused to hand over the morphine. Said it was federal medical supply. Protected. Her voice went hollow. The man Colt shot him. No warning, no hesitation. Just shot him in the chest and watched him die. Rose gasped. Sam's arms tightened around her. I was hidden in the supply wagon. Saw everything. When they were dividing the morphine, I ran. Took a horse, rode into the storm. And they're hunting you, Sam said, not a question. I'm the only witness. I can identify all 5 men. I can testify, put them on a gallows. They can't let you live. Ethan's voice was grim. No. Silence fell heavy. Outside, the storm continued its assault. Inside, 3 adults and 1 child processed what this meant, what was coming. How much ammunition you got? Sam asked. 40 rounds for the Winchester, 20 for the Colt. Not enough. I'll bring more tomorrow. Food too. You're going to be hosting longer than planned. Sam, I can't ask you to. You ain't asking. I'm telling. The old man stood set, rose down gently. Protecting the weak ain't weakness, son. It's what separates men from animals. He moved to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame, looked back at Ethan. But remember this, wolves hunt in packs. One man alone can't hold against many. Then I'll pray I don't have to be alone. Sam nodded, satisfied. You won't be. I'll be here, soon as weather allows. After he left, Ethan stood at the window for a longer time, watching the old man disappear into the white, watching the empty landscape where somewhere maybe 10 miles away, maybe 25 killers waited for the storm to break so they could finish what they'd started. I'm sorry. Claire's voice was small. I've brought hell to your doorstep. Ethan turned, looked at her for a long moment, then at Rose, who was watching them both with those two old eyes. Hell comes whether we invite it or not. He checked his rifle, ejected the magazine, checked the rounds. Only question is whether we run from it or face it. You could turn me in, claim a reward maybe. There's no reward. And even if there was, he met her eyes. A man stands for what's right, or he ain't much of a man. Rose climbed down from the table, walked to Claire, took her hand. We're a family now, the child said with absolute conviction. Families don't give up on each other. Claire looked at Ethan, saw him struggling with the words his daughter had spoken, saw the war between wanting to protect them and wanting to send her away, saw him choose. She's right. His voice was rough. You're staying. We'll face whatever comes together. Why? Claire whispered. You barely know me. Ethan was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, and his words carried the weight of absolute truth. Because you make Rose smile. Because this cabin's been dead for 2 years. Because maybe God sent you here for a reason, and I'm done arguing with God. That night after Rose slept, Ethan sat by the fire cleaning his rifle. Claire sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. Neither of them speaking, but both feeling the weight of what was coming. Tell me about your wife, Claire said softly. He looked up, surprised. Why? Because Rose needs to remember her, and you need to say her name out loud sometimes. Long silence. Then Ethan set down the rifle, looked into the fire, spoke. Margaret, her name was Margaret. First time he'd said it without pain cutting his voice. She was strong, brave, could outshoot most men, had a laugh that made you want to laugh too, even if nothing was funny. She sounds wonderful. She was. He picked up the cloth again. Wiped the barrel with unnecessary thoroughness. She died giving birth. Baby didn't make it either. Son, Samuel, lived 3 hours. His voice cracked. Just stopped. Both of them. 2 years ago this winter. Claire moved closer, sat beside him, didn't touch, just presence. I'm so sorry. Some days I forget what her voice sounded like. The admission came out raw. Then I feel guilty for forgetting. Remembering her doesn't mean you're betraying her, Ethan. He looked at her then. Really looked. First time she had said his name. It sounded different in her mouth, softer, like it meant something new. Sam said the same thing. Because it's true. They sat in the firelight, two broken people finding unexpected comfort in shared grief. Outside, wolves howled. Real wolves this time. But human wolves were out there too. Waiting, hunting, coming. And Ethan Cole, who'd spent 2 years trying to die slowly of loneliness, found himself wanting to live again, wanting to fight, wanting to protect this strange woman who'd stumbled into his life and reminded him what it felt like to have purpose beyond simple survival. The storm would break eventually. The killers would come. Blood would be shed. But tonight, in this moment, by this fire, 3 people who'd been alone too long found something worth fighting for. Family. Not by blood, by choice. And sometimes that made all the difference. The storm broke on the 3rd morning, December 27th, revealing a world transformed into crystalline white silence. 3 feet of snow lay in drifts against the cabin walls, sculpted by wind into shapes that suggested frozen waves. The sky stretched endless and blue, deceiving in its beauty. Temperature had dropped to 20 below, the kind of cold that turned breath to ice before it left your lungs. Ethan stood at the window, coffee steaming in his hands, watching the eastern tree line, watching for movement that shouldn't be there, watching for death approaching on horseback. Behind him, Claire helped Rose dress for the day, their quiet conversation a domestic sound this cabin hadn't heard in 2 years. The normalcy of it struck him like a blow. How quickly the human heart adapted. How easily 3 days could make a stranger feel like family. Sam arrived at 7, materialized out of the white like a ghost made solid, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. Ammunition, food, wire for perimeter bells. The preparations of men who knew violence was coming and refused to meet it unprepared. Found something, Sam said without preamble, stomping snow from his boots. His face was grim. Tracks, single rider, circled your property last night around midnight. Ethan's hand tightened on his coffee cup. How close? 30 yards at nearest point. Stood by that big pine watching your cabin for 20 minutes. Then rode east toward the road. Scout? Scout. Sam pulled a strip of jerky from his coat, chewed thoughtfully. They're confirming she's here, counting how many guns you got, planning their approach. Claire had gone pale. Rose clutched her hands, sensing the fear, even if she didn't understand its source. How long? Ethan asked. Day, maybe 2. They'll wait for easier travel, but not much longer. Sam looked at Claire. They know you're here, ma'am. Question now is how many they bring and when they come. The old man unloaded his supplies with practiced efficiency, talking as he worked. We string bells on wire. Circle the whole cabin. 30 yards out, waist high. Anyone crosses that line, we get 2 minutes warning. Not much, but enough. He showed Ethan fishing line, nearly invisible, strong enough to hold against wind, but weak enough to break if someone stumbled through drunk or careless. Small bells, the kind used for Christmas decorations, stripped from Sam's own cabin. We work fast. Get this done before noon. They worked in silence, 2 men moving through snow that came up to their thighs, stringing line from tree to fence post to tree, again testing tension at each point. Rose helped carrying bells in a small bucket, counting them out loud to keep herself occupied. 43 bells, total, circling their small piece of safety like a prayer made physical. Inside, Claire prepared for what was coming. She sorted medical supplies with the cold efficiency of someone who treated battlefield wounds. Boiled bandages, sharpened the one surgical knife she'd managed to carry through her escape, filled every container with water. If they tried to burn them out, water would be the difference between survival and death by smoke. By noon, the perimeter was set. Sam tested it personally, walking through at various points. Each time the bells sang their warning. Clear, impossible to miss. 2 minutes, Sam confirmed. Maybe less if they're running, but enough to get Rose hidden and guns positioned. He taught them the drill. At the sound of bells, Rose goes to the cold cellar immediately. No questions, no delays. Claire takes the west window with the spare rifle. Ethan covers the front door. Sam takes the east window, watching the tree line that provided the best cover for approaching enemies. They practiced until Rose could make it to the cellar in 15 seconds flat, until Claire could load and aim in under 10, until every person knew their role without thinking. Good, Sam said finally. Now we wait. Waiting, Ethan discovered, was harder than fighting. Fighting gave you something to do, something to focus on beyond fear. Waiting left too much room for imagination, for counting all the ways this could go wrong, for measuring your ammunition against infinite scenarios and finding it wanting every time. That afternoon, Floyd Whitlock arrived. 60-year-old rancher from 5 miles north, rode up to the cabin with his hands clearly visible and empty. The bells announced him. Everyone moved to positions automatically. Then Ethan recognized him through the window and lowered his rifle. Easy friend, Floyd called. Just checking on neighbors. But his eyes were sharp, taking in the defensive preparations. The bells, the ammunition stacked by windows. The woman half hidden behind Ethan, dark-haired and scared. Over coffee, Floyd proved he knew more than he should. Dugan brothers, he said without preamble. They came to my ranch yesterday morning, asking about a dark-haired nurse. Said she stole from them. Claire's hands shook on her cup. Ethan moved closer to her unconscious protection. I told them I hadn't seen anyone. Floyd looked at Claire directly, which was true at the time, but I'm guessing not true anymore. You going to turn her in? Ethan's voice was flat, dangerous. Turn her in to killers. Floyd laughed, but without humor. Son, I got 2 daughters, both grown now. One's a nurse in Billings. If she was running from murderers, I'd hope someone would hide her. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. So no, I'm not turning her in. I'm offering help. What kind of help? Sam asked. The kind with guns. I got 2 sons, Jack and Thomas. Both fought in the Indian campaigns. Both good shots. We can be here in 20 minutes if you signal. Why? Ethan asked. Why risk your family? Floyd's face hardened. Because I've seen what those Duggan boys do. 3 years ago, they killed a homesteader south of Fort Benton. Shot him and his wife. Burned their cabin. Left their children orphaned. He looked at Rose. Any man who'd hunt a woman ain't a man. He's a wolf in human skin, and wolves get put down. Sam nodded slow approval. How many Duggans we talking about? 5 that I saw. Colt's the leader. Scar on his left cheek, dead eyes. Virgil's second, younger, meaner. 3 others brothers or hired guns, hard to tell. 5 against 2, Ethan calculated. 5 against 5 if my boys come, Floyd corrected. Maybe better odds than you think. They planned into the evening. Fields of fire, ammunition distribution, communication signals using Rose's whistle. 1 blast meant enemy spotted. 2 meant hold position. 3 meant retreat to cellar. 4 meant all clear. Rose practiced until she could do it in her sleep. The responsibility seemed to age her. 7 years old and learning how to be a soldier because the world left children no choice. After Floyd left, promising to return at first light with his sons, the cabin felt smaller, more fragile, like the walls that had seemed solid now revealed themselves as just wood and hope against men who dealt in bullets and fire. That night, Rose asked the question they had all been thinking. Papa, what if the bad men win? Ethan knelt to her level. They won't. But what if they do? He looked at Claire, at Sam, at the small space they'd turned into a fortress. Then we'll know we fought for what's right. Sometimes that's all men can do. Rose climbed into his lap. I'm scared, Papa. Me too, darling. Really, really, being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing what needs doing anyway. After Rose fell asleep, the adults sat by the dying fire. Sam whittled a piece of pine into something that might become a bird. Claire mended a shirt with hands that trembled slightly. Ethan cleaned his rifle for the 3rd time that day, obsessive and necessary. Tell me about the doctor, Ethan said quietly, the one they killed. Claire's hands stilled on the fabric. Dr. David Morrison. He found me after my parents drowned. I was 16, half dead from exposure and grief. He took me in, not as a servant, as family. Her voice went thick. He trained me, taught me medicine, reading. Everything I know I learned from him. For 13 years he was my father. And you watched him die. I watched him murdered, shot down like an animal because he wouldn't give criminals what they wanted. She looked up, eyes bright with unshed tears. I hid in the wagon like a coward while the only family I had bled out on a way station floor. You survived, Sam said. That's not cowardice. That's smart. It feels like cowardice. Feeling don't make it true. Ethan set down his rifle, moved to sit beside her. Their shoulders touched small contact that felt enormous in its significance. You're here now, he said, and you're going to testify. You're going to make sure those men hang. That's not cowardice. That's justice. If I survive long enough to testify, you will. We will make sure of it. Claire turned to look at him, really look, searching his face for something she couldn't name. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Outside, wolves howled. Inside, the fire crackled its slow death. Because you make Rose laugh, he said finally. Because this cabin's been a tomb for 2 years and you made it feel like a home again. Because maybe some things are worth fighting for even if you barely know them. He met her eyes. Because I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. And somehow you reminded me there's a difference. The kiss happened without planning. One moment they were looking at each other. The next, Claire's hand was on his cheek and Ethan was leaning forward and their lips met with a desperate gentleness that spoke of two people who'd forgotten what it felt like to want something beyond the next sunrise. They broke apart, breathing hard. Sam had conveniently disappeared to check the perimeter, giving them privacy. Understanding what they were only beginning to admit. "I shouldn't want this," Ethan whispered. "But you do." "But I do." They held each other as the fire died to embers. Outside, the temperature dropped toward 30 below. Inside, two broken people found warmth in each other's arms and tried not to think about how many hours might be left before violence shattered this fragile peace. Morning came too soon and too bright. December 28th, the date everything changed. Floyd arrived at dawn with his sons. Jack, 25, serious and solid. Thomas, 22, who talked too much but moved like a soldier, both carrying rifles, both understanding exactly what they'd signed up for. "Ma'am," Jack said, simply nodding to Claire. "Heard you need an army." "More like a militia," Thomas added, grinning despite the situation. "But we're cheaper." They positioned themselves efficiently. Military training showing through civilian clothes. Thomas took the east tree line, hiding 30 yards out with a rifle and 200 rounds. An invisible sniper. Jack took the north window. Floyd the west, Sam the east inside. Ethan held the front door. Rose and Claire went to the coal cellar. The safest position, the medical station, the last refuge if everything went wrong. And then they waited. Hours crawled. 9 o'clock, 10, 11, nothing. Just wind and snow and the weight of anticipation. At noon, Thomas whistled once. Enemy spotted. Everyone froze. Rose clutched Claire's hand in the darkness of the cellar. Above them, men moved to windows. Safeties clicked off. Breathing slowed. "Where?" Ethan called, voice barely carrying. Thomas whistled twice more, then once. "Southwest, single rider." Through the window, Ethan saw him, lone horseman on the southern ridge 1/2 mile out. Not hiding, deliberately visible. Sitting there for 10 minutes. Watching them. Letting them know he knew. Then he rode away. Slow, unhurried, message delivered. "Psychological warfare," Sam said. "Making us scared, making us make mistakes." "When will they come?" Floyd asked. "Tonight, maybe tomorrow dawn, but soon. They're done scouting." The day stretched into evening. They ate in shifts, never less than 3 guns on watch. Rose tried to lighten the mood by showing Thomas her wooden horse, explaining with intense seriousness that her papa had made it and he was very talented and maybe he should quit farming and make toys instead. Thomas, chastened by 7-year-old wisdom, agreed solemnly that yes, her papa was very talented indeed. At 3 in the afternoon, Jack called out, "Movement, tree line, north." Everyone to positions. Fast. Practiced. Rose to cellar without being told. Claire right behind her. Where Sam had his spyglass up. Lost it. Maybe nothing. Maybe deer. 10 minutes later, a deer did emerge. Everyone exhaled. False alarm. But the tension didn't break. It built. Every shadow became an enemy. Every sound a threat. The waiting was breaking them down exactly as intended. At 6 o'clock, as twilight turned snow blue, the rider returned. Same position, same deliberate visibility. But this time he raised his hand, pointed directly at the cabin, drew his finger across his throat. Universal sign, "You're dead." Then he rode away. "That's it," Ethan said. "Tonight, they come tonight." They ate dinner cold, no fire to silhouette them against windows. Venison jerky and hard bread and fear that sat in their stomachs like stones. Sam pulled Ethan aside, spoke quiet enough that the others couldn't hear. "I want you to know something, son." The old man's voice was serious, heavy with things unsaid. "I'm 72 years old, had a good life, long life, seen things most men never see, done things I'm proud of and things I regret. Sam, don't..." "Let me finish." Sam gripped his shoulder. "You got decades ahead. Rose needs you. That woman in there, she needs you too, even if she don't know it yet. So if it comes down to it, if someone's got to make a stand to buy time, it's gonna be me." "Absolutely not." "That's not your choice, boy. I'm telling you how it is." Sam smiled, sad and certain. "Everything I taught you, you already knew. You just needed permission to trust yourself. Now I'm giving you permission to let me do this." He pressed something into Ethan's hand. A pocket watch. Gold. Heavy. Worn from decades of use. This was my father's, his father's before that. Now it's yours. When Rose gets married, you give it to her husband. Tell him old Sam said to protect her or answer to me in the afterlife. Ethan's eyes burned. I can't lose you too. You're not losing me. I'm giving you time. There's a difference. They stood in the darkness, teacher and student, father and son, in everything but blood. Then Sam moved away back to his window, ready to do what he'd always done, stand between danger and the people he loved. At 8 o'clock, the bells rang. Not one bell, multiple, from 3 sides simultaneously, north, east, west. The south left open deliberately. A trap. Positions, Sam's voice cut through rising panic. Now, Rose ran for the cellar, Claire right behind her, grabbing the rifle as she went. No hesitation, training taking over. Ethan at front door, Sam at east window, Floyd at west, Jack at north, Thomas outside in the trees, invisible and deadly. 5 men inside the cabin and perimeter. 5 men approaching from outside. Even odds. Terrible odds. A voice called from the darkness. Strong, confident, used to being obeyed. Ethan Cole, we know you're in there. Ethan didn't answer. Silence was often the best response. We don't want trouble with you, friend. Just send out the woman. Nobody else gets hurt. Still silence. Come on now, she's a thief and a liar. We're just taking her back to face justice, the word justice from a murderer's mouth. Almost funny if it wasn't so deadly. You got a little girl in there. Think about her. You really want her to see her daddy die over some stranger. Ethan's hands tightened on his rifle. In the cellar, Rose heard every word. Claire held her close hand over her mouth to muffle the child's frightened breathing. Finally, Ethan spoke. Opened the window just slightly, voice carrying clear in the cold night air. Justice, you murdered a federal doctor. This woman's a witness. She's under my protection. Pause, then laughter from outside. Cold, humorless. Your funeral, friend. The voice belonged to Colt Dugan. Ethan knew it now. Recognized the flat affect of a man who killed without conscience. Open fire. Windows shattered inward, glass exploding in deadly sprays. Everyone dropped. Bullets punched through walls, through furniture, through the life they'd built. Return fire erupted, rifles blazing from every window. The cabin filled with smoke and noise and the copper smell of gunpowder. Jack fired twice. Hit one northern approach. Floyd's rifle cracked. Missed, correcting. Second shot. Down. From the trees, Thomas's rifle spoke with cold precision. Once, twice. Dugan's shoulder, he's pulling back. But the return fire was withering. 5 guns outside pouring lead into the cabin. Bullets splintering wood. Etching lines of death through walls. Too close. Too many. They're going for the barn, Sam shouted, trying to torch it. Ethan saw movement. Dark figure was something burning, moving toward the barn where their winter hay was stored. If it burned, livestock would starve. If it burned close enough, the cabin would catch. Rose's whistle blew, 3 sharp blasts from the cellar. Ethan spun, back window, another figure approaching. Rose had seen from the small cellar window. Warning them. Brave girl. He fired blind through the wall, heard a scream. The figure dropped. Good girl, Sam called down. Good brave girl. But the barn threat remained. The figure was closer now. 10 yards. 8. About to throw his torch. Thomas's rifle cracked from the darkness. Once, the figure stumbled. Torch fell into snow, hissing out. The figure kept running. Thomas fired again. This time the figure dropped and didn't rise. Barn's clear, Thomas called. But they were burning through ammunition faster than planned. Ethan counted his shots. 20 rounds gone already. 20 left. Not enough. Not nearly enough. An hour of firefight. Both sides entrenched. Both sides bleeding. One Dugan brother down, wounded but alive. Another dead near the barn. Thomas had been hit, grazed across the shoulder, but still fighting. Sam took a bullet through his side, and Ethan's blood went cold. I'm fine, the old man shouted, pressing cloth against the wound. Keep shooting. But he wasn't fine. Ethan could see it. The way Sam's hands shook. The blood spreading across his shirt. Too much blood. Claire wanted to come up to help, but Ethan shouted her down. Stay with Rose. That's an order. In the cellar, Claire held the child and listened to the battle above. Every shot was a prayer. Every silence was terror, waiting to hear whose voice would call next or whose voice would never call again. At 10 o'clock, the shooting stopped. Eerie silence. Worse than gunfire. At least gunfire told you where enemies were. Anyone hit bad? Floyd called. Thomas? Jack's voice worried about his brother. Flesh wound, Thomas called from the darkness. I'm good. Sam. Ethan couldn't see him in the smoke. Still breathing, but his voice was weak, thready, not good. Outside, Colt Dugan's voice again. You can't last forever. We got all night, all winter. You got enough food, enough ammunition. He was right. They were trapped. Ammunition running low. One man wounded badly, trapped like animals in a cage waiting for the hunter to reload. What do we do? Floyd asked. Sam pulled himself upright, blood staining his shirt black in the lamplight. I know what I do. Sam, no. It's time, son. The old man checked his rifle. I'm bleeding out anyway. Hour, maybe two, but I can still shoot, still run, still buy you time. I won't let you. You don't have a choice. Sam gripped Ethan's arm. Hard. Final. They're focused on this cabin. I draw them north. Give you a chance to thin them out. Maybe even run for it if it comes to that. Sam, please. Listen to me. The old man's eyes were fierce, alive with purpose despite the blood soaking through his clothes. I told you this morning, everything I taught you, you already knew. You're a good man, Ethan Cole. Better son than my blood ever gave me. Now you listen. He pulled Ethan close. You marry that woman. Give Rose brothers and sisters. Fill this cabin with life. That's your job. Living. Really living. Not just surviving. I need you. No, you don't. Haven't for years. But I needed you. Needed to feel useful. Needed to matter. Sam smiled through pain. So let me matter one last time. Before Ethan could stop him, Sam moved, kicked open the front door and charged into the darkness, rifle blazing, shouting at the top of his lungs. Come on, you cowards! One old man against all of you! He ran north, firing as he went, drawing fire like lightning to a rod. Dugan's men couldn't resist the target. They converged on him, forgetting the cabin, focusing on the lone attacker who dared to face them. Cover him! Ethan shouted, already firing, Jack and Floyd joining, pouring suppressing fire into the darkness. Thomas from his position doing the same. But there were too many guns. Sam made it 30 yards impossibly far for a 72-year-old man bleeding from a gut wound. 30 yards through snow while bullets kicked up white around him. 30 yards of pure courage. Then he went down. No. Ethan was moving before thought. Out the door, into the kill zone, running toward where Sam had fallen. Bullets everywhere. Floyd and Jack providing the covering fire. Thomas's rifle working overtime. Ethan reached Sam, grabbed him, started dragging him back. Leave me, Sam gasped. Get back inside. Not a chance. They made it 10 yards. 20. Sam's blood painting a trail in the snow. 25 yards. Almost there, then Sam's hand gripped Ethan's arm. Enough. Stop. We're almost. Stop! Sam's voice carried absolute command. Look at me, son. Ethan looked, saw what he'd been denying, the gut wound, the massive blood loss, the gray pallor of a man with minutes left, not hours. Get inside, Sam whispered. Let me die doing something that matters. You matter. You've always mattered. Then honor me. Let me go. Around them, bullets still flew. But for this moment, in this small space, there was just an old man and the son he'd chosen. Everything else faded. Thank you, Ethan said, for everything. Sam smiled. Tell Rose. Tell her Grandpa Sam said to be brave. Tell her courage isn't fearless. It's fear walking forward anyway. I will. And that woman, marry her. Don't wait. Life's too short for waiting. I promise. Good boy. Good man. Sam's hand loosened. Now go, before they find their courage and rush you. Ethan ran, back to the cabin, bullets chasing him but missing. Luck or providence or Sam's final gift. He made it through the door. Jack slammed it behind him. From the darkness, they heard Sam's voice one last time, shouting at his attackers. That all you got? 72 years old and still tougher than you cowards. Then rifle fire, a scream, silence. Samuel Brennan. 72 years old, former cavalry scout, frontier survivor, teacher, friend, father in all the ways that matter, died in the snow, buying time for a family that wasn't his blood, but was his heart. In the cellar, Rose heard her father's anguished cry and knew before anyone told her. Knew the way children know when the world shifts and someone they love is gone forever. She started crying. Claire held her, also crying, for a man she'd barely known, but who'd stood between her and death without hesitation. Upstairs, Ethan sat with his back against the wall, Sam's blood on his hands, Sam's pocket watch heavy in his pocket. The battle continued outside, but he barely heard it. All he heard was an old man's final words. Live. Really live. Sam had died buying them time. The question was whether Ethan would be brave enough to use it. Dawn broke cold and merciless on December 29th. The gunfire had stopped 3 hours ago, replaced by a silence more terrible than any battle. Ethan stood at the window, watching gray light creep across snow stained with blood. Sam's body lay where he'd fallen 30 yards out, already dusted with fresh powder. They couldn't retrieve him. Not yet. Not with Dugan's men still out there waiting. Inside the cabin, exhaustion hung thick as the gun smoke. Floyd sat slumped against the west wall, reloading by muscle memory alone. Jack nursed a grazed shoulder that Claire had bandaged in the brief lull. Thomas had come in from the trees at 4 a.m., half frozen, but alive, reporting 2 Duggans dead and 3 retreated to regroup. They'll come again, Sam had said before his final charge. The old man's words echoed now like prophecy. They got to. Can't let a witness live. Rose hadn't spoken since Sam died. She sat in the corner clutching the whistle he'd given her, staring at nothing with eyes too old for 7 years. Claire stayed close, one hand on the child's shoulder, the other resting on the rifle she'd learned to use in one terrible night. Ethan counted ammunition. 18 rounds for the Winchester, maybe a dozen for the Colt. Floyd had 20, Jack 15. Thomas had burned through most of his 200 rounds holding the tree line. They had enough for one more fight. Maybe. If they were lucky and precise, and if God hadn't turned his face away from this blood-soaked piece of Montana territory. We can't hold another siege, Floyd said, voice hoarse from shouting orders in the dark. Not with what we got left. Then we don't wait for them to come to us. Ethan's voice was flat, empty of everything except the cold calculation of a man who'd lost too much and refused to lose more. We take the fight to them. Everyone looked at him like he'd gone mad. That's suicide, Jack said. Staying here is suicide. Slower, but just as certain. Ethan moved to the table where Sam had sketched maps the day before. The old man's blood was still on the corner of the paper. They're camped somewhere close. Probably Brennan's way station 10 miles southeast. Same place where they killed Dr. Morrison. You can't know that, Thomas said, but it makes sense. Shelter, water, off the main road enough that army patrols won't stumble on them. Ethan traced the route. 2 hours ride, maybe 3 in the snow. You're talking about hunting them. Floyd understood now, saw the cold purpose in Ethan's eyes. Turning the tables. Sam died buying us time. I won't waste it cowering in this cabin waiting to die. Claire stood. Then I'm coming with you. No, I'm the witness. This is my fight more than anyone's. Which is exactly why you stay. Rose needs you. And if this goes wrong, someone has to get her to safety. To the army, to testify about everything. Their eyes met across the smoky cabin. Something passed between them that had nothing to do with words. Promise. Fear. The acknowledgement that this might be goodbye. Come back, Claire said. I'll try. Not good enough. Promise me. Ethan looked at Rose. At the child who'd already lost her mother and grandmother, who'd just lost the grandfather figure she'd barely known. Who couldn't survive losing him, too, I promise. He turned to Floyd. Can your boys hold the cabin? We can, Jack said. Long enough to get the women away if it comes to that. Then Floyd and I go hunting. Rest of you fort up here. Anyone approaches who isn't us, you shoot first. Ethan knelt before Rose. She looked at him with those ancient eyes, and he saw she already understood what he was going to do. Children who grew up on the frontier learned early that sometimes men rode out and didn't come back. I'll return, he said, I promise. You promised Mama you'd live. Her voice was small, broken. Don't break promises, Papa. I won't. He pulled her close, breathed in the scent of her hair, innocent soap and wood smoke and childhood that was ending too fast. "You're the bravest girl in Montana. Mr. Sam said so. You remember that while I'm gone." He handed her the pocket watch. "Keep this safe. It was Grandpa Sam's. His father's before that. Now it's ours. You hold on to it till I get back." Rose clutched it like a lifeline. Ethan stood, moved to Claire. They had no privacy, no moment alone, just the entire cabin, watching as he pulled her close and kissed her. Deep, desperate, the kiss of a man who might be riding to his death. "When I come back," he whispered against her lips, "we talk about everything, about staying, about becoming a real family." "When you come back," Claire agreed, because if was a word neither could afford. Ethan and Floyd armed themselves efficiently, extra ammunition divided between them. Knives. Ethan took his best rifle, the Winchester, that had belonged to his father. Floyd carried a Sharps that could drop a buffalo at 300 yards. They rode out at 7 a.m., 2 men against 3 killers tracking back along the path the Duggans had taken when they retreated. Following blood in the snow, following hate toward its source. The land stretched white and empty around them, beautiful and deadly. Montana in winter didn't forgive mistakes or weakness. Neither did Ethan Cole. He'd spent 2 years being weak, being broken, letting grief define him. Sam had died to give him a chance at something better, at life instead of mere survival. He wouldn't fail the old man now. They tracked in silence, both men conserving energy and heat. The Duggan trail was easy to follow. 3 horses, 1 rider wounded and bleeding steadily, heading southeast exactly as Ethan had predicted, toward Brennan's way station. "What's the plan?" Floyd asked after an hour of riding. "Kill them." "I meant tactically." "I meant literally." Ethan's voice was cold, precise. "They murdered Dr. Morrison. They murdered Sam. They're planning to murder Claire and probably Rose and everyone who helped them. So we kill them first. Simple. Your wife raised you to be a good man." "She did, but good men don't survive by being gentle. Not out here." They reached the way station at 10 a.m. Single structure barn attached, built to house travelers passing through between Fort Benton and Helena. Smoke rose from the chimney, 3 horses in the corral confirming Ethan's guess. They circled wide, approaching from the north where trees provided cover. From 50 yards out, they could see through the grimy window into the main room. 3 men around a table, Colt Duggan's scar visible even at this distance. Leroy, the youngest, maybe 18, and Marcus, middle brother, with his arm in a sling from Thomas's bullet. No 4th man, the lookout Sam had warned about. "Where's the watcher?" Floyd whispered. "Behind us or dead. Either way, we move fast." But before they could advance, a voice spoke from behind them. "Drop the rifles. Slow." They'd been outplayed. The lookout hadn't been ahead. He'd been tracking their back trail, waiting for them to focus on the cabin and forget the basics. Never assume. Never stop checking your 6. Mistakes that got men killed. Ethan and Floyd lowered their rifles. "Turn around. Hands where I see them." They turned. The man was young, maybe 22, scared but holding his pistol steady enough. Hired gun, not a brother. Probably doing this for money instead of blood loyalty. "They paying you enough to die for this?" Ethan asked. $50. More than I make in 6 months ranching." "That worth getting hanging, because that's where this ends. Federal murder. Killing a government doctor. They'll hang everyone involved." Doubt flickered across the young man's face. "You're lying. Army's already hunting them. Posted notices in every town. Your name too, probably soon as they figure out who you are." "I didn't kill anybody, just stood watch." "Judge won't care. You ride with killers, you hang with killers." The gun wavered. "What do you want?" "Walk away, right now. Take your horse and ride. Don't look back. We never saw you. You never saw us." "They'll kill me if they find out." "We'll kill you if you don't leave. Choose." The young man looked at the cabin, at Ethan, at his future measured in seconds. Then he made the only smart choice he'd probably ever make. Lowered his gun back toward the barn, found his horse and rode north fast without looking back. "Think he'll warn them?" Floyd asked. "Don't care. Down to 3 against 2 now. Better odds." They repositioned, took up spots on opposite sides of the way station. Ethan at the front door, Floyd at the back. Classic pincer. No way out except through bullets. Ethan didn't knock. Just kicked in the door, rifle up and ready. Three men froze, hands moving toward guns but not fast enough. Not against a man who'd already accepted he might die and decided to take them with him. Don't! Ethan's voice was death incarnate. Floyd's got the back door. You're surrounded. Colt Dugan recovered first, smile spreading slow and mean across his scarred face. Cole, didn't expect to see you here. I'm full of surprises. Where's your old friend, the one who charged us? Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. Dead, because of you. Died a fool's death. Should have stayed inside where it was safe. Wrong thing to say. Exactly the wrong thing. Ethan's remaining restraint shattered like winter ice. He died a hero. More than you'll ever be. Look, Colt tried a different approach. Reasonable, almost friendly. We can make a deal here. Woman's not worth all this blood. She's not just a woman, she's family. You barely know her. I know enough. What are they paying you? Colt leaned back calculating, reading Ethan wrong, thinking this was about money instead of honor. We'll double it, triple it, just walk away. Not about money. Everything's about money, friend. What family, not honor, but justice for men you murdered? Colt's face hardened. The negotiation was over. That lying bitch can't testify if she's dead. The word bitch about Claire, the woman who'd brought light back into his cabin, who made Rose laugh, who kissed him like he mattered. The casual cruelty of it broke something in Ethan. She's alive. You're not. That's all that matters now. Colt went for his gun, fast, practiced, the kind of speed that came from killing often and well. But Ethan was faster, driven by grief and rage and the promise he'd made to Sam, to live, to protect, to be worthy of the sacrifice. He fired. The bullet caught Colt in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Marcus went for the rifle, leaning against the wall. Floyd shot through the back window, shattering glass in Marcus's chest in one explosive moment. Leroy, the youngest, dove for cover behind the overturned table. The room filled with gun smoke and screaming, and the chaos of violence compressed into seconds that felt like hours. Ethan and Colt grappled, both wounded, both desperate. The rifle fell away. They fought with hands and knives and hatred. Colt was younger, stronger, used to bar fights and dirty fighting, but Ethan had rage, had purpose, had the memory of Sam's last words driving him forward. He smashed Colt's face with his fist, once, twice, 3 times until the man's nose broke and blood sprayed hot across Ethan's knuckles. Colt stumbled back, reaching for a knife at his belt. Ethan shot him, point blank, center mass, no hesitation. Colt Dugan fell. The man who'd murdered Der Morrison, who'd ordered Sam's death, who tried to burn innocent women and children for the crime of showing mercy. He died on a dirty waste station floor, bleeding out fast, while staring at the ceiling, and maybe finally understanding that evil always finds its reckoning. Floyd had Marcus covered. The middle brother clutched his chest, still alive, but not for long. Lung shot, drowning in his own blood with each gasping breath. That left Leroy, the youngest, barely more than a boy, hands raised, crying, surrendering. Don't shoot. Please, I didn't want this. My brothers made me. I didn't want to hurt anybody. Floyd raised his rifle. Finish him. Ethan stood over Leroy, gun aimed at the boy's head. One pull of the trigger, and this would be over. Justice served, revenge complete. Sam's death answered with blood. His finger rested on the trigger. Pressure building. One more pound of force, and a life ended. Easy. Deserved. Right. But Sam's voice echoed in his head. Being a good man means doing right even when it's hard. Ethan lowered the gun. No. He'll hang anyway, Floyd said. Why not finish it? Because that's what they do. We're better. Ethan grabbed Leroy by his collar, hauled him up. You're going to testify against everyone involved. Names, faces, buyers for the morphine accomplices, everything. Understand? Yes, sir. Leroy was sobbing now. Yes, sir, anything. Please don't kill me. I won't, but if you lie, if you run, if you do anything except help hang every person involved in murdering Dr. Morrison, I'll find you. And mercy won't save you twice. Clear. Clear, yes, sir. I'll tell everything, I swear. They tied him up. Used the station's rope, normally for securing horses, now for securing a killer too cowardly to die with his brothers. Marcus bled out while they worked last gasping breath rattling around the tiny room. 2 Duggans dead, 1 captured. The rest scattered or dead from the cabin siege. It was over. As they stepped outside, cavalry appeared on the horizon. 30 soldiers led by Captain Marcus Hayes, too late for the battle, but perfect timing for the aftermath. They'd been 1 day out when the siege started, pushed their horses hard when they heard gunfire carrying across the frozen landscape. Captain Hayes took in the scene with a soldier's eye. 2 civilians, 2 dead bodies inside, 1 prisoner. Blood in the snow leading to a 3rd dead man. What happened here, Ethan told him. All of it. The attack on the medical wagon, Claire's escape, the siege, Sam's death, the final confrontation. Hayes listened without interrupting, making notes, asking clarifying questions. You should have waited for us, Hayes said finally. They were planning to burn my family alive. I didn't have time to wait. Hayes looked at the bodies, at Leroy weeping against a post, at Floyd and Ethan both wounded, both exhausted, both alive. I should arrest you for vigilante justice. Then do it. Hayes was quiet for a long moment, then extended his hand. But I won't. These men were wanted for federal murder. You acted in defense of a witness and your family. Far as I'm concerned, this was legal. They shook, soldier to civilian, both understanding that sometimes law and justice weren't the same thing, and sometimes you had to choose. We'll escort you home, Hayes said. Make sure no surprises are waiting. The ride back took 4 hours. Army moving slow to protect civilian scouts ranging ahead, checking for ambush. They found none. The Duggan gang was broken, dead or captured or scattered to wind. As they crested the final hill, Ethan saw his cabin. Still standing, still smoking from the chimney, still home. Rose saw them first, screamed with joy that carried across the snow. Papa, she ran out without coat or shoes, heedless of cold, heedless of everything except her father coming home alive. Ethan dismounted fast, caught her as she crashed into him, spinning her around while she sobbed and laughed and held him tight enough to hurt. I knew you'd come back. I knew it. Claire stood on the porch, face streaked with tears, legs unsteady, relief so powerful it looked like pain. Ethan walked to her, Rose still in his arms, and pulled them both close. It's over, he said. We're safe. All of us. They stood there while the army secured the perimeter, while Floyd's sons emerged from the cabin looking exhausted but triumphant, while Captain Hayes ordered his men to retrieve Sam's body with honor and dignity. Safe. Finally, after 4 days that felt like 4 years. That night, they buried Samuel Brennan on the hill overlooking Ethan's land, the highest point where he could watch over them forever. Simple ceremony attended by everyone who'd known him. Soldiers stood at attention, civilians bowed heads. Rose placed wildflowers on the grave, dried ones saved from summer because winter had none to give. Ethan spoke, words coming rough and broken but necessary. Sam was the best man I knew, taught me everything that matters, not just survival but honor, courage, love. He showed me that family isn't blood, it's choice. We choose who to stand beside, who to fight for, who to die for. His voice cracked. Sam chose us, over and over, even unto death. He saved my life more times than I can count, not just with his guns, with his wisdom. He taught me to let go of the past without forgetting it, to honor the dead by living fully, to find courage when you're terrified. He looked at Rose. He taught this brave girl that courage isn't fearless. It's fear walking forward anyway. Looked at Claire. He taught me that second chances are real, if you're brave enough to take them. To the gravestone, Sam, I promise you this, I'll live, really live, not just survive. I'll teach Rose everything you taught me, and when she has children, I'll teach them too. Your wisdom won't die with you. That's your legacy. That's your immortality. Floyd spoke next. 40 years of friendship compressed into 3 minutes of halting memories. Sam arriving in Montana in 1838 at 18 years old. Sam surviving Indians and outlaws and winters that killed stronger men. Sam choosing to stand with those who needed standing with every single time. That's the measure of a man, Floyd concluded. Not what he takes, but what he gives. Sam gave everything. The world's poorer for losing him, but we're richer for having known him. Rose placed the whistle on the grave. So you can call for help if you need it, Grandpa Sam. Hearts broke at the gesture, but also mended, because that was exactly what Sam would have wanted. Remembered with love instead of grief. Honored with life instead of tears. Captain Hayes handled the official business with efficiency born of long military service. Took statements from everyone. Claire's testimony secured Leroy Duggan's full cooperation. The boy confessed to everything, named accomplices, identified buyers for the stolen morphine. His testimony would hang a dozen men before this was done. Justice will be served, Hayes assured Claire. Morrison's murder will be avenged. It doesn't bring him back. No, ma'am, but it means his death wasn't meaningless. Other doctors, other innocents are safer. That's worth something. Hayes turned to Ethan. The government appreciates what you did, harboring a witness at great personal cost. We'd like to compensate you. I don't want money. Not money. Land. Hayes pulled out papers. Your homestead. You've been here 7 years. 7 years this spring. Requirement is 5 years plus 10 acres cultivated. You've exceeded both. I'm authorized to grant immediate patent. The land is yours, free and clear. Ethan stared. You can do that. I can, and I am. Consider it done. 160 acres of Montana territory. His, permanently. The dream that brought him and Margaret west. The future they'd planned and she'd never lived to see. Now real. Now certain. There's another matter, Hayes continued. Looked at Claire. Miss Bennett, you're a skilled nurse. Territory needs nurses. There's a position in Helena if you want it. Claire glanced at Ethan. Neither spoke, but volumes passed between them. Or, Hayes added with the barest hint of a smile, if you were married to a homesteader, you could practice here. Serve the local community. Be close to, meaningful pause, family. He left them to consider that. Ethan found Claire an hour later, standing at Sam's grave, looking out over the land that stretched forever under stars that burned cold and bright. I know I said we'd wait, Ethan began, till this was over, till we were sure. He knelt in the snow, right there on the hill where they'd buried a hero. But I am sure. I've never been more sure of anything. Claire Bennett, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Rose's mother? My partner in all things. Claire started laughing and crying simultaneously. You're proposing now in the snow at a gravesite. Sam's watching, wanted to make sure he saw it. Then yes. She pulled him up, kissed him hard. 1,000 times yes. Rose appeared from behind a tree where she'd been definitely not eavesdropping. You said yes. I said yes. The child ran to them, crashed into both adults with enough force to nearly knock them over. We're really going to be a family. We really are, Ethan and Claire said together. On the hill overlooking their land under stars and moonlight, and the quiet blessing of a dead man who'd wanted nothing more than for them to live, 3 people held each other and became what they'd needed all along. Family. Spring came late to Montana territory that year. March turned to April before the real thaw began. By then, Claire had seen 27 patients, delivered 1 baby, saved 3 lives from infection. The community knew her now, trusted her, called her their nurse with pride and possession. The wedding was planned for April 20th, simple ceremony, frontier style, no fancy dress or elaborate celebration, just community gathering to witness 2 people promising forever. Mrs. Whitlock sewed Claire's dress, simple blue that matched her eyes. Other women brought food. Men repaired the barn damaged in the siege. Children ran wild in the warming weather. Montana at its finest. Hard people making soft moments because beauty was rare and therefore precious. Claire insisted on visiting Sam's grave the morning of the wedding. Needed his blessing, even though he couldn't give it. Needed to acknowledge that he'd made this possible. I wish you were here, she told the gravestone. Simple granite with simple words. Samuel Brennan, teacher, friend, hero. He is here, Ethan said from behind her, just in a different way. They stood together watching the sunrise. Everything I have is because of him. This land, this life, you. He'd say you earned it. Maybe, but I wish he could see it. Wind rustled through new grass, just beginning to push through old snow. They both smiled. Yeah, Ethan agreed. He sees it. The ceremony at 2 p.m. was perfect. Floyd walked Claire down the improvised aisle. Rose scattered flower petals with intense concentration that made everyone smile. 60 people attended. Big crowd for frontier wedding. Testament to how this community had embraced the nurse who'd nearly died on Christmas Eve. The preacher spoke traditional words made new by circumstance. Ethan Cole, do you take this woman? I do, with everything I am. Claire Bennett, do you take this man? I do, with everything I have. Rose presented the rings. Gold bands made from Sam's pocket watch chain melted down and reformed, carrying his legacy forward into new life. Ethan slipped the ring on Claire's finger. With this ring, I promise you'll never be alone again. Claire returned the gesture. With this ring, I promise you will never have to be strong alone. Rose interrupted before the pronouncement. Wait, everyone stopped. Can I say something? The child asked. The preacher smiled. Of course, Rose looked at Claire. I promise to be a good daughter. At Ethan. I promise to be brave like Grandpa Sam taught me. At both. And I promise to love you forever. Not a dry eye in attendance. By the power vested in me, the preacher concluded, and witnessed by this community, and blessed by God above, I now pronounce you husband, wife, and family. They kissed while everyone cheered. Rose hugged both their legs. The community erupted in celebration. Food and music and dancing. Life continuing despite death. Joy built on foundations of grief, but no less real for it. Floyd raised the first toast. To the Cole family. Long life, many children, warm winters. Thomas added his. To the bravest woman I've met, and the craziest man. Both prove that good people still exist. Claire surprised everyone by standing with her glass. To Samuel Brennan, who isn't here but should be, who taught us that family is choice, who gave his life so we could have this day. Sam, wherever you are, thank you. Your legacy lives on. Everyone raised glasses. To Sam. Ethan and Claire snuck away after an hour, walked to Sam's grave in the golden afternoon light, stood hand in hand looking at the stone. Think he approves? Ethan asked. I know he does. They stood in comfortable silence. Wind warm for the first time in months, snow nearly gone, land turning green. Montana showing its rare gentle face. Everything I have, Ethan said quietly, I owe to people I've lost. Margaret gave me Rose. Sam gave me purpose. You gave me life again. We gave each other life, Claire corrected. That's how this works. They walked back to the celebration, to community, to beginning. Behind them, a gravestone stood watch over the land, a silent guardian, a permanent reminder that the best of us leave pieces behind, not in stone or gold, but in changed hearts and saved lives and families built from strangers who chose each other. Below the hill, Rose played with other children, safe, happy, healing. She clutched Sam's whistle in one hand, Ethan's promise in her heart. The world hadn't beaten her, hadn't made her bitter or afraid. She'd seen death in a chosen life, seen grief and chosen joy. That was the real inheritance, not land or money, but the knowledge that courage could be learned, that family could be built, that the worst nights eventually gave way to dawn. And sometimes, just sometimes, the blizzard that tried to kill you delivered exactly what you needed to survive. 5 years later, April 1884, the Cole homestead thrived. 40 acres under cultivation now. New barn standing twice the size of the old. Medical clinic in its own building where Claire saw patients 4 days each week. The cabin expanded with 2 added rooms to hold a family that kept growing. Rose was 12 now, teaching her younger siblings with the patience of someone who'd learned early that knowledge was currency more valuable than gold. Samuel and Morrison, 4-year-old twins, named for the men who'd saved their family, followed her everywhere with complete devotion. Margaret, called Maggie, toddled at 2 years old with her mother's determination and her father's stubborn jaw. Claire was pregnant again. Baby number 4 coming by summer. Ethan had stopped apologizing for the large family, started seeing it as Sam would have, as abundance, as life winning over death, as the best possible revenge against men who tried to end them. This morning, Rose taught the twins a split kindling in the yard. Swing down, not across, she instructed. That's what Grandpa Sam taught Papa, and Papa taught me. Now I teach you. Samuel struggled with the technique. Why try him? Because skills keep families alive. Because knowledge is inheritance. Because someday you'll teach your children and Grandpa Sam's wisdom will live forever. Morrison looked at his twin. We never met Grandpa Sam. No, but I did, and I'll tell you everything about him. Inside, Ethan reviewed the ledger with satisfaction. 400 bushels of wheat last year. $200 profit from crops. 50 monthly from Claire's clinic. Add in vegetables, eggs, occasional beef sales, they cleared over $1,000 annually. Not rich by city standards. Wealthy beyond measure by frontier ones. Papa, Rose appeared in the doorway. Tell us the story. Which story? The blizzard. How Mama Claire came. Samuel and Morrison crowded in. Yes, tell us. Maggie toddled over, not understanding, but wanting to be included. Ethan lifted her into his lap. Claire joined from the clinic, wiping her hands, settling beside him. The whole family gathered for a story they had heard 100 times, but never tired of. The wind carried no mercy on Christmas Eve 1878, Ethan began. Using the same words every time because ritual mattered, because some stories deserved to be told exactly right. But it carried something else, something we didn't know we needed. It carried hope. It carried family. It carried your mother. The children listened rapt while he told of finding Claire in the snow, of Sam arriving with wisdom and ammunition, of the Dugan brothers and the siege, of an old man's final sacrifice, of courage found in the darkest moments, of love built on foundations of grief. When he finished, Samuel asked, was Grandpa Sam the bravest man ever? The bravest I ever knew. Braver than you, Papa, Ethan smiled. Much braver. He taught me everything I know about courage. Morrison piped up, tell about the watch. Ethan pulled it from his pocket. Sam's watch carried every day for 5 years, polished smooth by constant handling, a physical reminder of debts that could never be repaid except by living well. This was Grandpa Sam's, his father's before him, his grandfather's before that. He opened it. Inside, he'd engraved names, Margaret, Samuel, Sam, Dr. Morrison, everyone who died to make this moment possible. When Rose gets married, Ethan told the twins, I'll give this to her husband. Tell him what I'm telling you now. Protect her or answer to all these people in the afterlife. Tell him family isn't blood, it's choice. It's standing with people when wolves are at the door. Rose blushed but listened carefully. 12 years old and already understanding, she carried weight. Legacy, responsibility to honor those who'd saved her. That evening, the whole family walked to Sam's grave. They did this every Sunday without fail, kept the flowers fresh, kept the grass neat, kept the memory alive. The gravestone had weathered 5 winters now, granite enduring what flesh couldn't. Rose placed fresh wildflowers while the twins ran around chasing butterflies. Maggie picked at grass with intense toddler focus. Claire and Ethan stood hand in hand watching their children play in the space where violence had once ruled. 5 years, Claire said softly. Feels like yesterday and forever ago simultaneously. Do you think he'd be proud? I know he would. Ethan pulled her close. 4 children, thriving homestead, you saving lives weekly, Rose teaching the next generation. This is exactly what he wanted. For us to live. Really live. They stood in comfortable silence. Below them, the cabin glowed warm in evening light. Smoke from the chimney, sounds of children's laughter, all the signs of life continuing despite everything. Papa, Rose called up, the twins want to know about the time Grandpa Sam faced down 12 outlaws single-handed. Ethan laughed. That story gets bigger every telling. But it's true, right? Rose's face was serious. Parts of it. Which parts? The parts about courage, about standing for what's right even when you're terrified, about protecting family no matter the heat. Those parts are true. Rose nodded, satisfied, ran back to her siblings to tell them edited versions of stories too violent for young ears, but too important not to share. As twilight deepened, Ethan spoke to the gravestone. Regular habit now, not morbid, just connection. We did it, Sam. Everything you asked. I married her. We've got children. The cabin's full of life. Rose is growing into someone remarkable. Strong and kind and brave. Like you taught her. He paused. I miss you. Every day. But I'm grateful. For everything you gave us. For every lesson, every sacrifice, you saved us. Not just from bullets. from ourselves, from loneliness, from slow death by grief. Claire added her voice. Thank you for my family, for giving Ethan permission to love again, for teaching Rose courage, for standing between danger and innocence. You're the reason we're all here. They stood a moment longer, then Claire said, we should head back, getting cold. But Ethan lingered, one more thing to say. I'll teach them, Sam, everything you taught me. The twins, Maggie, all the children to come. Your wisdom won't die, I promise you that. The wind rustled through grass, warm spring wind carrying the scent of growing things, new life pushing through old death. Montana at its most honest, hard and beautiful and utterly unforgiving to those who couldn't find reasons to endure. But the Coles had found their reasons, had built them from scratch in blood and sacrifice, had created something that would outlast stone and memory, a legacy not of land but of love, not of wealth but of wisdom passed down through generations. As they walked down the hill toward home, Rose slipped her hand into Ethan's. On his other side, Claire held Maggie while the twins ran ahead playing some game only they understood. Papa, Rose asked, when I have children, will you tell them about Grandpa Sam? Every chance I get. And about Mama Margaret. Her too, and Dr. Morrison, everyone who made us possible. That's a lot of people. It is. We're built on the shoulders of giants, Rose. Never forget that. I won't. They reached the cabin, warmth and light spilling out the door, dinner waiting, family gathered, all the small miracles that made life worth the cost of living it. Inside, they settled around the table. Ethan said grace thanking God for food and family, and the ones who weren't here but never really left. The children ate with the enthusiasm of youth. Claire smiled across the table at her husband, 5 years married and still discovering new reasons to be grateful. After dinner, Rose helped clean, while the twins played with wooden toys Ethan carved on winter nights. Maggie fell asleep in Claire's arms, peaceful and secure. The cabin filled with the sounds of home. Dishes clattering, children laughing, the crackle of fire in the hearth. Ethan stood at the window watching darkness settle over their land. 40 acres they owned free and clear. 160 acres total of Montana territory. Small piece of an infinite world, but theirs, completely, permanently. What are you thinking? Claire asked, coming to stand beside him. About how close we came to losing all this, how many times death nearly won. But it didn't. No, because of Sam, because of you, because somehow in the middle of winter and violence and grief we found each other. He turned to her. I love you, more than I thought possible, more than words can hold. I love you too, you and Rose and all of this. She gestured at their children, their home, their life. I was running from death when I stumbled into your fence line, but I found life instead, found home, found family. They kissed, gentle, comfortable, the kiss of partners who'd survived hell together and came out stronger. Rose appeared beside them. Time for bed. Past time, Ethan said. Get your brothers ready. I'll be up to say goodnight. She herded the twins toward the loft with practiced efficiency, 12 years old and already half raising them. Ethan made a note to thank her properly later, to remind her that childhood mattered too, that she didn't have to be adult yet. After the children were settled and prayers said and final requests for water handled, Ethan and Claire sat by the dying fire. Their time. The hour when the house was theirs alone. Sam would be insufferable about this, Ethan said suddenly. 4 children in 5 years. He'd make endless jokes about me making up for lost time. Claire laughed. He'd probably also have advice about raising them. 17 rules for proper child rearing or some such. All of them contradicting each other, but all of them somehow right. They smiled, remembering. The old man had been gone 5 years, but his presence still filled this cabin. In the watch Ethan carried, in the skills Rose demonstrated, in the courage they all drew on when things got hard. Do you think he knew? Claire asked. When he charged out that night, did he know he was giving us a chance at this? He knew. Sam always knew. That's what made him remarkable. He could see the shape of things, could calculate odds and and decide what price was worth paying. And we were worth it? Apparently so. Claire leaned against him. I'll spend my whole life trying to deserve that sacrifice. You already do. Every life you save, Every patient you treat, you're honoring him. We all are. By living fully instead of safely, by choosing courage over comfort, by building family from strangers and calling it home. They sat in peaceful silence, 5 years of marriage behind them, decades more ahead if luck and health held, 4 children already, more probably coming if Claire's fertility kept its current pace, a medical practice growing, land producing, community built. The story that began with a blizzard and a dying woman had become something nobody could have predicted. Tragedy transformed into triumph, grief alchemized into joy, death creating space for abundant life. Ethan stood banked, the fire helped Claire to her feet. They climbed to their bedroom, added on last year when the twins made privacy impossible, settled into bed together, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. Perfect fit after 5 years of practice. Ethan, Claire's voice was drowsy. Do you ever regret it? Taking me in all the danger and death that followed. Never, not once, not even for a second. Even losing Sam. Even that. Because Sam chose it. And because without that night, without you, I'd still be half dead. Just surviving instead of living. Rose would be growing up with a ghost for a father. This cabin would be empty of everything except memories. He kissed her forehead. You saved us, Claire. Just as much as we saved you, maybe more. Maybe. She was asleep before he finished, exhausted from the day, from pregnancy, from the constant work of frontier medicine, but smiling even in sleep, content, home. Ethan lay awake a while longer, listening to his wife breathe, listening to children sleep in the loft above, listening to the cabins settle around them, all the small sounds of life continuing. Through the window, stars burned cold and distant, same stars Sam had watched, same stars that would watch over Rose's children and their children after. Eternal witnesses to the brief, urgent lives of humans who loved and fought and died and somehow against all odds endured. The wind whispered through the eaves, not the merciless wind of that Christmas Eve 5 years ago. Gentle wind now, spring wind, carrying the scent of growing things and new life and possibilities that stretch forward like light. In his pocket, Sam's watch ticked steady, measuring seconds into minutes, into hours, into days. Time flowing forward relentlessly, but not empty, full, abundant, rich with meaning and purpose in the knowledge that some things were worth any price. Family, not blood, but choice. Courage, not fearless but faithful. Legacy, not land but love. An inheritance measured not in gold but in wisdom, passed down through generations. In children taught to stand tall. In hearts brave enough to choose joy even after grief. In lives lived fully in honor of those who died to make such living possible. The wolves had come on Christmas Eve 1878, but they hadn't won. Life had won, love had won, family had won, and in a small cabin on a hill in Montana Territory, the inheritance of wolves was transformed into something far more powerful. Hope, enduring and unbreakable, passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation, forever.